Hello, everyone. This is a very special signal hour. Just came together last minute. I called my team just minutes ago and said we got to do this. Obviously, lots of very fast breaking things going on now with what I'm calling the Trump revolution, because it is a revolution. This isn't just about getting some extra efficiencies out of this and that, and maybe skinnying down Department of Education. Let's be very clear. My thesis here is that Trump knew, based on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, I think he finally figured out what he was up against. This wasn't just sort of like some swampy creatures whooping up some fake stuff about Russia to tangle them up so that, they could continue with whatever they wanted to have done. So came loaded for bear. And he has now really poked that bear. And now we're going to see the reaction. So I want to talk about this because there's a type of violence that's being bandied about here. And I don't think it's completely organic. And I think we should talk about it so it has a name. And we will be able to identify it when we see it. And in particular, I'm making a call here that Trump, Elon, the FBI under Kash Patel, maybe the DNI under Tulsi Gabbard, wherever this needs to come from, that if it turns out that there are U.S. agencies and or NGO cutouts funded by places like USAID that are funneling money into bot farms that are busy trying to incite violence among people, that maybe that should be looked into. And I suspect there should be very special penalties that should go along with that. Now, as we see, there's a general insurrection actually going on, or rogueness going on around some of the departments out there, because this is quite the shock to find out that some people out there consider that, a 50, 60, $70 billion USAID slush fund that's mainly used to reward insiders in a circular loop that then put money back into campaign coffers of people who reward them and then promote these narratives. Like the whole thing's it's pretty dodgy. And as a taxpayer, you should care. Everybody should care. Here's the thing I don't understand. There should be overlap across some issues, right? So I get it, right? The RFK confirmation, we just saw that the Senate Finance Committee, 14 Republicans voted yes, 13 Democrats voted no. Bernie Sanders, Liz Warren, Ron Wyden. Now, why did they vote no? Well, because they just couldn't, stand the idea of Bobby Kennedy, but there was no overlap where Bobby said, look, all I want is good science. We should have some science. Maybe we should have data and science. Have a seat at the table too. We've got political interests, we've got corporate interests. Maybe science should have a seat at the table. And he knows more about that than anybody. You would think at a minimum, you would have heard something like that from a Liz Warren or Bernie Sanders, who talks like this, his hands. You got jazz hands, you got Bernie hands, right? With his onesies. So what's missing in that, though, is for them to say, hey, Bobby, I totally get it. We want good science, too. You want good science, so we can agree on that. Now, here's where we disagree. No. Whole thing, they had to reject him completely out of hand because, well, he may well represent a threat to corporate interests, such as the ones that are funding these people over here. And so think about that. What they're telling us flat out is that Bobby's threat to their funding model, which is their personal purse and power, is more important to them than getting good science so that maybe we have fewer autistic kids who are damaged for life, and the parents and the tragedy that visits upon the families who in some cases have children that have to be cared for their entire lives. And that's just not the deal. And that there are people who would willingly go there and do that for political points or dollars is gross. I mean, that's what just got revealed. This is full stop gross. But we got to talk about something that I'm worried about. And we are talking about this back at Peak Prosperity. And by the way, this is live, and I am looking at the comments as best I can as I'm going along here. So Zubird saying treasonous penalties. I think those would be some good penalties there. Joe Potter, well-paid big pharma shills. You betcha, with harm in all caps there. Harma shills. And of course, science is never settled. These leaders they're just paid liars. They are. They got really exposed, just awful. Like they're not reading the room, and I mean the national room. I don't know how long they've been in their little bubbles, but they thought they could get away with this stuff crazy, crazy, crazy. And this is what we're really going to be talking about, though, is what Funky's talking about here, Funky Wanderer, that the corruptocracy does not like oversight. It just doesn't. It's about to get some good and hard. Now, this is the funny part. So, stochastic terrorism. What am I talking about? First up, this is what we saw over on a subreddit. When you see the r/, if you're not a Redditor, over there on Reddit, an r/ is a community. So this is a community called White People Twitter. I think it's been disbanded, but it was operating for quite a while. And they were just 100% Trump derangement syndrome. If it was Trump, anything related to Trump, they were just angry about it. Well, this is kind of crazy, though, because the title of this post was Musk's Doge henchmen have been identified. And they did. They doxed him out. Elon Musk has some young people working for him. They're bright, very, very intelligent guys. And anyway, so he has them working for him. And these people have decided it's time to go in on some full hate. I mean, if you can't read those because it's kind of small, like circled in blue, but here are a few of them, right? These people all live somewhere. Time to hunt. Pink missed them all. I'll say it. This Nazi stooge needs to be shut. Okay. And you can keep reading. It's just like that. It's just a wall of allegedly people. Now, this is where we're going to go with this particular story because, this is a pretty incredible story here. But the thing I want to get to is, what if not all of these are actually people? And I don't think they are. If you go to Reddit, you'll find out that it's a big, giant hive mind of narrative reinforcement. Like if you say anything off script, like if you dare defend Elon here, you would just get downvoted into instant oblivion. You would find that comments that are generally supportive of anything related to Trump or anything not deep state just gets shouted down. I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is, call it CIA, call it NSA, call it USAID, NGO cutouts. There are, call it Pfizer's got their own bot farms running and pointed at Reddit, but Reddit has turned into a complete shit show. It is just entirely about big state narrative reinforcement, right? You had to be for the vaccines. You had to be for masking. You had to be for Ukraine. You had to be for all sorts of things. And now you have to be against Elon because they're outraged. They're outraged that Elon is looking into USAID. Now, here's the fun part. I will guarantee you that to the extent these are real people behind these pseudonyms, drag them up and ask them to name one program that they're really upset about that USAID was running that might not run. First off, I don't think they even knew what USAID was a week ago. Even to this day, they won't know. This is like, remember we had those man in the street interviews during the Kamala run, that totally fake AstroTurf thing where we found out internal polling all showed that they all knew they were losing. Even though every major news outlet and major pollster showed it was a tight race, right? Remember all that. Anyway, the man on the street interviews would go like this. So you're voting for Kamala? Yes, I am. And why is that? Oh, I really like her policies, such as a complete blank, right? There was no there, right? So I'd be convinced that these people are really righteously, indignantly, murderously angry about something they actually can't even tell you why. Now, we have to talk about that because this is related to this idea that, remember now, probably in this same crew of people, to the extent it is people, and that's right, Earl Coley, we're going right here. This is cognitive warfare, right? This is psychological manipulation, right? Reddit is, as Wrong Way is saying here, heavy on bots and paid astroturfers, okay? But now we're going to get to the criminality of this in just a second, because this is really, really important. Okay. Wait a minute. Somebody had something else here I want to maybe get to. Yeah, that's true. Hold on. Oh, I lost it. So many comments went by. Good stuff, people. Keep them coming. I'm reading them. Where did it go? Yeah, here we go. Enter the Dragon Slayer writing here. Reddit destroyed my relationship. It completely brainwashed my ex. Oh, totally. I know what you're talking about. If you go to Reddit and you go to like our relationships, typical conversation goes like this. Somebody writes in and says, I think my my ex was just, I think my partner is just a little sketchy with their phone. They turned it away from me once, and all of Reddit's like, divorce them right away, get a private investigator, lawyer up. It's just, they just instantly go right to, you're being taken advantage of. And, it's just crazy. I mean, it's really toxic. It is. I'm so sorry that happened to you. It's no bueno. But anyway, it is good to understand what the astroturfers and bots want us to think, which means it's sort of an insight into the deep state narrative structure. Like, what is it they're trying to reinforce here? But now they're doing something here where it's very clear that to the extent these are not humans, these are bots, these bots are clearly nudging. Remember the nudge units? The nudge units we all had to put up with? You wouldn't want to kill Granny, would you? Right? For the magic holy jab, right? You wouldn't want to be seen as anti-science, would you? All those things were actually weaponized statements that were run through the equivalent of clinical trials in order to find the most potent ways to shame people into complying with what they wanted, which was they, for whatever reason, we can talk about this later, the deep state, the machinery of state wanted everybody to get not just a vaccine, but the mRNA vaccine. Different story, different day. But this is actually something that I think is in danger of getting exposed by all of this. So anyway, the hive has been poked. There's angry bees about, right? And the reason is that once Elon and his team poke into USAID, they're going to find probably payments in there that are really going to stretch your credulity. Remember back, Rand Paul said, Dr. Fauci, did you fund gain of function research through EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak at Wuhan Institute of Virology? And we got Fauci just indignant. Senator, you don't know what it wasn't gain of function. And besides, even if it was, only $300,000 even went there. That's not enough. If you knew anything about the science, you would know that's not enough. Would you be surprised to find that USAID alone funneled $38 million through EcoHealth Alliance to Wuhan? Would you be surprised if we dig further and discover that the State Department probably had a little more they chipped into that kitty and that the DOD did? Would you be surprised to find out that actually the United States funded over $200 million for the virus that ended up costing our economy trillions and allegedly 1 million lives? Although, again, died with, a little murky, right? But if we get RFK in there, maybe we can get a peek at those CDC databases finally. Who knows? But look at all the things that could suddenly get exposed. This is just like we have a dirty kitchen and the lights have been off for about 30 years and suddenly just somebody flicked on the kitchen lights and it's like, whoa, cockroaches everywhere. That's what's going on. And so now I'm convinced, and this is a warning message to everybody, and maybe for myself too, that when you're reading any social media site, the chance that you're engaging with a real human is pretty low compared to the chance you're dealing with an AI bot that is specifically tuned to do things, get you distracted, pull you off of the topic, make you think something different, create the appearance that you're in the minority when actually there's this, look at this majority of people who all think this way. I wouldn't want to be in the minority, playing on our desire to belong and not be part of the out group and all of that, right? Listen, this all got dialed in a long time ago. And by the way, this is one of the people who they seem to hate, and I will show this at some other time, but this is a great little 3-minute thing that shows that one of the people that Elon, and I'm not going to name these people, by the way, because I don't want to do I know these names have all been doxed already. I'm not going to do their work for them. Out of principle, I'm not going to continue that for them, whoever's doing this, because I consider it really, really disgusting. But anyway, one of this guy, nice young kid, if you heard about the papyrus scrolls that were burned in Pompeii during the volcanic thing, right? And they dug these out and they had these burned scrolls and they couldn't read them, but they had done some, CAT scans of them. And then they put the files online after they struggled for years and years and couldn't get anywhere and said, can anybody, we'll just maybe an international competition. This guy with a laptop said, oh, that looks like a fun challenge, and solved it. Unbelievable. So these carry on. So maybe at a minimum, the FBI ought to be looking here, like here with Riri over here on Blue Sky Social. That's B Sky Social, over there. That was the Twitter startup, competitor for all the people who were too angry that there was just too many Nazis in Twitter or whatever their story was. So they wanted to be free from the toxicity of Twitter. So they went and created Blue Sky, where they get to treat themselves to statements like this. Says, Riri says here, you know the mechanism, Mary. Supreme Court of the U.S., SCOTUS, clearly has interpreted the Second Amendment for hundreds of years. The mechanism, Mary, is to shoot every single Republican politician in their stomach. Ooh. Riri is not just angry. She's bitterly angry. The solution is to drive down to Elon Musk's house and do that stuff that you can read there. It's just extreme violence, okay? Now, this is the kind of thing, right? Remember, the FBI under Biden arrested people for praying. You can disagree with why or how they were praying, but they arrested people for praying. They busted down practically Roger Stone's door at 6 a.m. with lights on, and their 223 rifles, just muzzles right in his face. Roll him out in his underwear. CNN magically there to make it embarrassing. Like, they could have just called his lawyer up and said, "Yeah, can you have him here at 9?" Yeah, that'd be great, right? Instead, they made it as painful as possible. But this is the kind of stuff where this deserves a knock on the door. Now, if the FBI knocks on this door and it's a real person, they should have a talk with Riri and say, we're going to need to know some more things about you here. How serious are you about this stuff? And are you okay? Right? I would have basic questions. I would not want this to be my neighbor under any stretch of imagination. I would want to know who this person is. Okay. Now, what if this isn't a person? What if this is an AI bot and it's got a very tuned message set, and its job is to create the appearance that maybe there's something, a lot of people are thinking this way, to sort of begin to seed out there among all the people who might read this and look at it, the idea that this is normalizing this behavior. That's what this is. This is normalizing this particular, it's like, oh, well, other people seem to be discussing this. You can talk about this openly. I guess this is what's called normalizing. Okay. So, or maybe here, OSAI here. I'm so glad the Democrats are done with weekend brunch and chop fundraising. I hope you had a nice break during the effing coup. Now, can you get someone in here to shoot Elon and his aides? Or are you all going in the guillotine when this is done? Oh, I've got a little French Revolution going on there, all caps, so you know how serious this person is. Again, real or a bot? Maybe the FBI could look here too. Carrie at a Blue Sky Social again. I'm replying to the Krasensteins. If you don't know who the Krasensteins are, when they're not busy funding teen porn sites, they're busy telling conservatives how bad they are. So at any rate, she says here, get Musk away from critical information computers. Get him out of the country or lock him up. I'd recommend the guillotine. So somehow the guillotine has become a very popular sort of thread amongst these people all of a sudden. So I'm glad they know how to spell guillotine. That's a good start. Not bad. So what are we talking about here? Because I keep saying, what if this isn't a human? What if this is a bot? What if that bot is funded by the US government directly or indirectly? What if it's a bot being run by some murky NGO with a name like Center for Discussing Digital Hate, right? What if it's one of the agencies? What if there's a FBI or CIA bot farm doing this stuff? Well, they would be engaging in what's called stochastic terrorism. This is in Wiki. By the way, this is not a legal term. There's no law against stochastic terrorism on the books, although there probably will be by the time this is all done. So this is, quote, stochastic terrorism here. The definition is, it's a form of political violence instigated by hostile public rhetoric directed at a group or an individual. Okay, stop for a second. Have you noticed any hostile public rhetoric directed against an individual or group so far? That's stochastic terrorism. Carrying on, quote, unlike incitement to terrorism, stochastic terrorism is accomplished with indirect or vague or coded language, which grants the instigator plausible deniability for any associated violence. A key element of stochastic terrorism is the use of media for propagation. where the person carrying out the violence may not have direct connection to any other users of violent rhetoric, end quote. So let's talk about the 2 assassination attempts on Trump. Now, I happen to believe that July 13th, when we finally get that unpacked, if we ever get there, we're going to discover there's no freaking way that the Secret Service just managed to leave that pie wedge out of the Pac-Man security perimeter, right? Where there was this slopey roof where this kid managed to just sort of like waltz around on a hot tin roof, banging along there for 3 minutes with nobody able to do much about that until shots were taken. I truly believe we're going to find things out. In fact, wouldn't it be kind of a mysteriously fun thing if we found out that somehow USAID was connected through some pipelines to one of those mysterious encrypted foreign bank accounts that Thomas Crooks had somehow? Maybe one of these indirect cutout groups. But at any rate, that's just speculation on my part, just guessing. Who knows? We're all free to speculate at this point. How much corruption are we going to find, and how far does that go, and how bad is it really? Yeah. So at any rate, carrying on here, this is stochastic terrorism. It's meant to be political violence. It's hostile public rhetoric. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. Now, let's carry on a little bit. So here are the defining features, again, from Wiki, of stochastic terrorism. They say, look, although it's an academic term without a formal legal definition so far, it is differentiated from other forms of terrorism due to its public, indirect, and seemingly random nature. Random, stochastic. That's where that comes from. So what happens is you seed out these messages, just like, sure would be a shame if something happened to that guy. And you put it out across several million people. The chance that one of them is going to do something to that guy, this chance of that, the random chance of that, the stochastics of that begin to approach 1, meaning it's going to happen. As you push that out longer and longer and more. Now, remember, in the run-up, during all of 2023, 2024, it was just Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, right? And we all know that if you could go back and kill baby Hitler, you would do that, right? Because that's already been morally defined as like, that's an okay thing to do. So it became all mushed up. And I think it at best, and this is at best, what happened to Thomas Crooks was he ingested too much of that stochastic terrorism through CNN, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, all of these other people, plus these shadowy groups that are about to be revealed through the USAID scrubbing and scouring. We'll take a look what's in there. I guarantee it's in there, 100%. And so that's what this is. And you do that often enough, and somebody like a Thomas Crooks goes, yeah, you know what? Maybe this makes sense. I'm going to, you know what? Let me just dial in my life here because it's that important. I'll be remembered. My name won't go down in history as a nobody, whatever their incel-like motivations might be. They want glory, and all of that. This is how you get it to happen without having to direct it, right? You create this stochastic terrorism landscape. And check this out under speech, quote, a public figure or group disseminates violent, inflammatory rhetoric via mass media directed at people or groups of people, sometimes suggesting or legitimizing the use of violence. In red underline, this speech tends to be protected due to the use of ambiguous, coded language, dog whistles, jokes, just a joke, bro, hints, and other subtext in statements that fall short of the criminal threshold for causation. And you note that it was just a joke defense has been linked to the early days of Nazism. And by the way, the left, the progressives, the people who are really wrapped up around Reddit, whatever they are, I don't know what to call them anymore. Conveniently, we'll call them the left. I don't understand. They're not. I grew up as a lefty. The left I grew up with was very liberal in the sense that it meant we treasured the importance of the individual, very anti-war, believed in higher education and really very good cogent thinking, all that stuff. None of that is actually, when I say the left, I don't know it's not that, something totally different, right? But one of the defining and most endearing traits of this new left is that they practice something called confession by projection. That is, they project upon their enemies their own worst traits. So when they call people, you Nazis, I guess that's code speak for authoritarian figures who have a racial undercurrent. Well, aren't these the people who want to be authoritarians and tell me that, that person with a skin color that's different from mine should have special advantages and I should have special disadvantages? I mean, literally, confession by projection. They're projecting that on. So just interesting that this has been linked to Nazism, right? And by the way, at the bottom in yellow, these attacks are often repeated and amplified inside a media echo chamber. So you go over to Reddit and you see this stuff all over the place. It's an echo chamber, but is it real? Okay. Now let's just remember dog whistles, jokes, and hints. Like this is an example of that, right? This is stochastic terrorism. Here, and by the way, I greened out their faces and their names, right? Eden Robbins over on Blue Sky said, "Here, I made you a postcard. Feel free to print it out and post it around your town. Send it to friends, whatever makes you happy." Right? Oh, so coy, right? It's threats, obviously. And they're angry down below because the U.S. Treasury pays for Social Security, Medicare, and grants and federal salaries. Yeah, I care so much suddenly about Social Security data, Medicare data, grants, and federal salaries that I've jumped straight. I've jumped straight past. I've gone past being annoyed. First, I became aware. Then I became annoyed. Then I became a little bit resentful. Then I became contemptuous. Then it became hostily angry. And finally, I went murderous. Nope, skipped straight to murdery on this one, right? Like skipped all the early steps, which tells you a clue about either this isn't real or it's not organic entirely because people didn't used to do that. They didn't skip all those steps and suddenly decide that they got murdery because federal grants are being examined. What? How did we get here, Toto? What's going on? At any rate, they say it, and Treasury is usually run by grown-ups, man. Mamas, come get your babies out of our government. So these guys are in their 20s. And I come from that old school left once upon a time. I don't belong there anymore. Like, trust me, I stayed where I was, but they left that train like supersonic out to the outer field of, I don't know what the F this is. But this idea that people they're little boys in their 20s, this Peter Pan syndrome is just awful. So this reminds me of one of my favorite stories, which is that Vinnie Ream started fooling around and carving and sculpting stuff. And at 16, her friends and supporters convinced President Lincoln to sit for her. So he did. She came to the White House daily for a half hour sculpting sessions, stretched out over 5 months in 1864. She made that bust as a 16-year-old. And by the way, at 18, she beat out several full-grown men, and she sculpted the life-size marble figure of Lincoln that sits in the rotunda at the Capitol building. Thank God there weren't any angry, whiny progressives around then to explain why sculpting should just be for grown-ups. Right? I just don't get these people at all. Anyway, one of my favorite side stories. But when you're under the stochastic terrorism bit, you go under the see also, okay? See also, accusation in a mirror. That's a hate speech incitement technique. Association fallacy, an informal inductive fallacy. You could see conspiracy theories, attributing events to less probable plots. Dehumanization, a behavior or process that undermines individuality of and in others. They're very good at this. Demonization, characterization of individuals, groups, or political bodies as evil. Diffusion of responsibility. Doxing, ethnic violence, extremism, false accusation, genocide justification, hate media, hate speech, incitement to genocide, little Eichmann's, moral panic. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of these things. So this idea of stochastic violence is linked to these things. Now, here's the fun part. So back in the late 50s, early 60s, we had some very famous social experiments that were run, and I'm sure you've heard of them, right? We had the Asch conformity experiments, for instance, right, where they started experiment Asch, ASCHE was the ACHE was the researcher, right? And put people in a room and had one person was the test subject, but they didn't know that they were the only test subject. There were all these other people, and then they had these other people do weird things like tell them that this line was shorter than this line, or this line was longer than this line, or whatever. They just randomly do crazy stuff. And you would find that the people who were the test subjects would quite often find themselves agreeing with the group for whatever reason. So that started to show the importance of social alignment within the human species, right? And then we had the Stanley Milgram experiments, which I'm sure you've heard about, which involved having a position of authority in a white coat telling somebody to continue shocking someone in another room who they couldn't see, but they could hear as they screamed in alleged pain. The switches weren't hooked up, but it sounded like they were dying. And wouldn't you know it, like 30% of people just kept going until death happened, right? Because somebody in a coat that they didn't even know or care about was telling them to. Point is, do you think for a minute that sociologists, doctors, people in the academic profession just don't need to have their name in public, that they would look at the huge everlasting fame of Milgram and Ash and go, yeah, not for me. No way. If people in universities are anything, they are egomaniacs for attention, right? It's like a thing. I know, because I was going down that path for a while. I didn't gel. But the point here is that you think those things just stopped in the 60s? You think sociology professors everywhere were like, yeah, that's Milgram and Ash. They just got too much fame for doing those kinds of experiments. I'm out. No way. Those things went underground, and they've been doing those things longer and longer and longer. And I submit to you that what we're seeing today, the best explanation for it is that there are tools of persuasion out there now in the hands of certain entities that are wicked powerful. Okay. And they're so powerful that if this is a real person, they lead to things like this. Jose Perez saying, how far do you have to be to shoot at a moving car where Elon Musk and Trump are? Both are enemies of our country. And a nice picture allegedly of them dialing in. That's a pretty good rig, by the way. That would be a very accurate. He's on an accurized bench rest. That's an accurized barrel. This is a precision shooter, right? Presumably with, I can't read it, but it looks like it could be some ex-military cap, something like that. So Jose Perez at Blue Sky Social, either this is a bot being run by some entity that's interested in creating the appearance, if not the underlying certainty in a group of people that they're in the center of the fold by thinking their murderous thoughts, or this is a gentleman who needs to get a knock on the door and we need to find out what he's up to, because this is not okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I could go with it. Probably take him into custody and see what's going on. Here we have Earl Coley again saying, Google, weaponized narrative exploring new vocabulary for the cognitive domain fight by Calvin Peterson Jr. I'm going to have to take a look at that. Yeah, so at any rate, let me see. And yeah, this weaponized narrative, very, very, very big deal. Just reading some comments over here. Let's try this one. Again, from Earl Coley saying, color revolution is the term used to describe a series of remarkably effective CIA-led regime change operations using techniques developed by the RAND Corporation, democracy, NGOs, and other groups. Now, I agree, and here's my hypothesis I'm building towards. Let's lay it on the table. Those tools were perfected from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. They were used in various color revolutions where social media and various statements and ways of phrasing things were used to nudge groups into sort of what's called mob behavior. Like there's two states humans exist in. Individual state, you could have a whole Times Square full of people. We're all individuals still, but there's something that happens when humans go to mob. Something very different happens. It's a different carrier wave state for the human condition. And they found ways to incite that, right? That was incited in Ukraine. It was incited in Georgia, et cetera. There's lots of places they ran these color revolutions. So is the RAND Corporation or equivalent running these things here now in the United States? That's the question we have to ask. Okay. Now, we've always known Reddit's a hotbed of bot activity, just total hotbed, right? And Reddit Lies, who I really like a lot, and I'll mention him again here, Reddit Lies on Twitter, Reddit_lies, does a great job of trolling Reddit so we don't have to. So it's a valuable service. Thank you. Redditors are out for blood, says Reddit Lies, and moderators don't know how to control them. So our something is wrong is the subreddit. There are only 20 people here at the time the screenshot is taken. The work of the Nazi F. Elon felon, I guess that's for felon. Very clever. And the moderator said, which is why we need to keep the subreddit clean. So the admins don't have an excuse to ban the subreddit because you don't want the whole thing just to get nuked if it gets too violent. And OK Philosophy 915 says, so the mod here is a fan of capitulating and appeasement. Let me set the record straight. The only good Elon is an Elon 4 to 5 feet off the ground, swinging in a gentle breeze, end quote. Right. Again, Hello, is that the FBI? Right? Somebody needs to like this can't this you just this is a no. Like if if my side had done this kind of stuff, we had plenty of reason to be angry during COVID. We had plenty of reason during all kinds of things I've been investigating and reporting on, where my side, which is the side of truth, reason, logic, basic decency, a little bit of empathy, right? If our side had ever said anything like this when the other side was in power, right? When Team Biden was in power, dude, you're getting the knocks on the door. So they either, if this is a real person, they're just like they've just gotten cocky. They just don't think consequences apply to them. They've just like, no, bad things can't happen to me. Only other people. We get people are fired and in trouble. That doesn't go the other way, right? But the point is that the side I've been associated with, we just never did this, right? As angry as I am at Fauci, the most heinous thing you'll ever hear me say is like, I think he should go to trial. And he should. I think he should have a fair trial. And then there should be consequences, because I'm pretty sure we'll know what we find if he went to trial, which is why he had to get a pardon dating back to January 1st, 2014. At any rate. So, this is absolutely right. It's unbelievable hubris. They just don't think that the rules apply to them. Carrying on, this is our white people Twitter, that subreddit before it got banned. And it turns out that Fear None Inc. On Twitter was saying, here's a list of the techies on the ground helping Musk gaining and using access to the U.S. Treasury payment system. Again, I've blocked their names out in that green square. I wonder if the FBI agents may want to dox them and maybe blah, 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 blah. Elon said, hey, by the way, you've committed a crime. Midas Touch here, whoever that is, said, knowing the names of the unelected oligarchs' underlings who are destroying the government from within is a crime now, apparently. And this got posted over to our right people Twitter. Doxing people is no good. Just no good. When you're inciting violence too. Yeah, like you just can't do that. Right? I can't like print your address out and say, by the way, it'd be a total shame if anything happened to that person. Know what I mean? Right? No, it's just no, you just can't do that. But at any rate, these people, they are not good people, and they're all upset that we're seeing. So well, let's listen in for a second. Here's Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, talking about this whole show.
Well, look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And USAID has a history of sort of ignoring that and deciding that there's somehow a global charity separate from the national interest. These are taxpayer dollars. And so I'm very troubled by these reports that they've been unwilling to cooperate with people who are asking simple questions about what does this program do, who gets the money, who are our contractors, who's funded. And that sort of level of insubordination makes it impossible to conduct the sort of mature and serious review that I think foreign aid writ large should have. We're spending taxpayer money here. These are not donor dollars. These are taxpayer dollars. And we owe the American people the assurances that every dollar we are spending abroad is being spent on something that furthers our national interest. And
all right, yeah. So, I mean, that's really the substance of the argument. USAID has been operating, and Marco, in a different interview, said, look, they don't think that they told us that they don't feel they have to be responsive to any particular U.S. agency. They're responsible and responsive to themselves, and they have a global agenda. Right? USAID, billions and billions and billions of our money, right? That's easy. Congress every year, here, how much do you need? USAID, 40, 50 billion. And a lot of that flows back into congressional and Senate re-election coffers. Pay no mind to that. That's easy, right? But in our easy hard framework, some things are easy. Corruption is easy in DC. You know what's hard? Doing good things for people, like Western North Carolina. what they needed to help rebuild, what Lahaina needed to rebuild. Whenever there's a big tragedy in the United States, the East Palestine train disaster, you think that went away because we're not talking about it? No, you can still go out to streams out there and sort of stab at them, and oily stuff comes up to the surface. It's nasty. It's hard getting money to help American citizens. It's easy when it's graft and corruption, all that stuff. So this is what just got exposed. And the question is, do you really think that there's a lot of people out there who organically are like, I'm so mad that somebody's going to finally take a look at where our taxpayer money is going into this shadowy, unaccountable international aid organization. My light switch got flicked, and I just went straight from I didn't know anything about this last week to murdery this week. Really? Okay, if that did happen, we got to talk about these tools of persuasion, because we're getting 5th gen warfare and psychological operations. These tools are so potent that if we find out that they have been turned against us by a corporation, an NGO, or even a US agency, I think there ought to be the equivalent of the corporate death penalty. Those agencies, gone, just nuked. Get them out of here. The corporation, disbanded. Sorry, all you taxpayers and bondholders in that corporation. That has all been seized by the public, and you lost. Better luck next time, caveat emptor. Do not invest in rogue entities, okay? Do some more due diligence next time. That's how I would run that stuff. Consequences. If I was going to run for president, I would have a single plank. Consequences. They're not just for little people anymore. I think that's what we ought to have. So at any rate, really, we think that a bunch of random Redditors and blue sky people suddenly got murdery because there's going to be some inquiry into how these funds have been dispersed over a few years? Or do we think it's more likely that those same entities that are being looked at are freaking out and dialing up all of their NGOs like, dude, if we could use a little help on a social campaign right now? Are there any ends, any means that we wouldn't? No, the ends justify the means totally. Yeah. Oh, let's murder? Yeah. Incite things towards a civil war? Sure. Right? I think that's what's going on here. I think. Okay. And remember, this is just a vast enterprise of narrative control. I'm safe saying that I'm positive that there's some skullduggery happening in here, because this wasn't just like we had just a little bit of like, listen, I was front lines on the censorship stuff, right? Getting the YouTube strikes, watching the shadow banning happening, watching this happen to my friends, watching this happen to colleagues, watching over and over again, and understanding that it wasn't just because Pfizer called up YouTube and said, we'd like a little less focus on ivermectin this week because we got to sell more Vax product. It wasn't just that. It was that there was this whole assistance apparatus that was specifically designed to shape opinion. And it did it very, very well. And I had to fight them head to head on places like back when it was called Twitter, before Musk took it over. I think I don't think they totally have control of their code yet, but we'll find out. But it was way worse then, right? When it got so bad that at the end of the whole thing, you had the FDA itself saying, seriously, y'all, it's horse paste. When they're talking about ivermectin, it's like, well, yeah, but it's also Nobel Prize winning human medicine you can take as a pill. Like, how was it that the FDA got so wrapped up in the narrative that they completely lost the plot of what ivermectin was? How did that happen? Right? Well, it happened the same way that the tobacco wars got fought for so long. It happened the same way that we now have all these toxic foods and things going on in our food system. It happened the same way that there are groups out there that are very, very good at nudging PR and weaponization of the narrative structure. And here they are. You got academic initiatives, right? You got think tanks, you got your so-called fact checkers or the gatekeepers. I can't talk about that. You got all these NGOs, and there could be a million of them there. You got your government, foundations, big tech. All of this stuff was part of the censorship industrial complex, but it's now created something which I think is very bad, which I think that the kind of brain damage that happens as a consequence of all these activities, it might be lasting. I'm not sure it's recoverable. My poster child for this would be Sam Harris. Very intellectual guy, smart. Went off the reservation, got a really bad case of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and seems unable to recover from that particular condition. And I'm not sure he's going to. I'm not sure that certain doctors who just like we had OBGYNs strongly advising their patients to get vaccinated pre or during pregnancy when they had no data for that. None. Advised it anyway. It's not something you do, but they did. At any rate, I don't know if they can come back from that sort of intellectually, emotionally, professionally. I don't know what you do. It may well be, but they get people into states where, all right, let's call it what it is. They create the same conditions that we see in cults. Okay. Now, what's a cult? A cult is an organized system of thinking that works against your better interests, right? Because we could argue we're all in a cult, right? It's just this is the dominant culture, so that's not a cult. A cult is a splinter thing. But you know what? There are organized systems of thinking within as a subset of your main culture that are very positive for you, right? I could consider if you went to Tony Robbins and really believed in and got invested in financial freedom and learning how to better yourself, that's an organized system of thinking, but it works to your benefit. So we don't call it a cult. A cult is an organized system of thinking that works against your better interests. So I would say if you fell victim to a cult and you believed in its ideology and you fell into its architecture of thinking, and then you woke up one day and you took on a stock, you would say, oh, that's a cult because, wow, my life is not better. It's not better because of this. It's really actually worse. So what's a good life? Happiness, contentment. You've got viable, deep relationships. You have a sense of meaning. You've got purpose, right? All of that. Well, after they applied this cult of thinking here to people and they really reinforced it and they used USAID as one of the sort of tools for that, not the only one, but definitely an important one, then you end up with things like this. We have Nerd with me, a moderator at Redder, saying, friends, keep reporting and I'll keep approving. Our Denver Food says here, will always be a place of acceptance, diversity, inclusion, and a celebration of the people and cultures that shape our vibrant culinary scene. However, if you support Trump or his regime, you are not welcome here. We do not want your views or opinions. Tolerating intolerance is complacency. Right-wing snowflakes, it's will always be a place of acceptance, diversity, inclusion, except for you guys. We're going to kill you. That's like, whoa, there wasn't even like an intervening paragraph to help get from A to B. That we just went from, we'll always be a place of tolerance and inclusion and diversity, except those people, we want to just kill them because they think differently. This is insane. This does not make your life better. That is insane cult-like thinking right there. Full stop. That's what that is. That is not well adjusted. Whoever fell victim to this idea that there's this vast group of people they have to hate on, which, by the way, I hate to tell you this, Denver Food, it's the majority of your country right now, based on the last voting results. And also based on my personal, interactions with humans out there, we're sick and tired of that whole being sick and tired thing. Like how it had been run. Y'all had your hands on the driver's wheel for like decades, and we ended up fat, stupid, and broke as a nation. And I mean that. Obesity epidemics. Our high school students score like the worst out of all the industrialized nations out there, developed nations, and we're broke. We're just totally broke as a nation. They're like, you know what? Anybody who points that out is just intolerant. We hate them right away. Anyway, we'll carry on with that for a bit. By the way, there is some pushback. Ed Martin is a U.S. attorney and is just basically saying, hey, we're aware that some of the staff at Doge has been targeted publicly. If they will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work or threatens your people. And so we will not act like the previous administration who looked the other way as the Antifa and BLM rioters, as well as thugs with guns, trashed our capital city, or protect Doge and other workers no matter what. Thanks for that, Ed Martin. He tagged the wrong Elon up there, so I hope he knows that. But at any rate, there may well be consequences at this point. Now, UB Putin's 2025, I'm going to guess that's a pretty recent handle, just made up. Bots are good at just coming up with new handles like that. Wrote here on Reddit, are we at a constitutional crisis yet? I started investigating if American citizens could demand military intervention. Of course, it won't happen because the Republican Christian extremists now own all branches of federal government. Christian extremists? What are you talking about here, dude? What just happened? Where did that come from? Again, if you asked him for a single example, oh, who's a Christian extremist that's in power right now that's wielding something? Go. Whose name are you going to pull out of that, right? I'm not clear who that would be. Anyway, it says here, yes, American citizens can request a military intervention by contacting their elected officials. So then they go on to explain how you could request a military intervention. Just totally weird. Here, Tar Heel 406 says Musk's actions blatantly violate the appointments clause of the Constitution. Oh, they've become constitutional all of a sudden. They said it's very important, this Constitution thing. Whether the executive even has this much power on its own is dubious at best. But for it to be wielded by Musk makes it pretty open and shut, unconstitutional, blatantly unconstitutional. Even this SCOTUS won't allow it, says Visco 0825. But hey, you guys, it read it. Do you remember when the Supreme Court struck down the student loan thing in 2023 and Biden kept doing it anyway, right? For another year. So this whole idea that if SCOTUS strikes it down, it's meaningful. Unfortunately, and I agree, it should be meaningful, but unfortunately, the precedent has already been set that the president can just ignore it and nothing happens. So that's not really good for your case right there. And here we have under our Fed News, that subreddit, why is no one stepping up to take action? Eventually, you'll see private citizens stepping up to take action. They say here, I can't wait. Significant Row 9416 says, I can't wait to wake up some morning to the nonstop headline news of some of these Doge 19 to 21-year-olds that are hacking USAID, Treasury, etc., and or Musk himself or his bro-ligarch friends being cold in the street. Can't wait. Definitely going to happen. Again, real or is this stochastic terrorism? If that's a bot putting that out there to create a fertile environment for violence to then happen, then I think that needs to be investigated. And I think that any entity that's running bots that are doing things like this needs to be immediately seized, disbanded, and its principal organizers and funders need to be charged with something because this is not okay. This is full on the modern equivalent of the so-called yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. People say, oh, you can't do that. That's against the law. No, you totally can if the movie theater is actually on fire, right? I hope someday there isn't a movie theater that catches on fire and everybody's silent because they're like, oh, dude, I can't. This is the one place I can't yell fire. I just hope not. But this is sort of the equivalent of that, right? There are certain things you can't do that would, the point behind the can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater is that if you did that and it wasn't on fire, you would create the condition knowingly that you were contributing to something that could well lead to mayhem or death, right? People would crush towards the exit and get hurt or die. That's why you can't do that. That's why it's not considered protected. The protection of free speech begins to fall apart when you utter or communicate threats or you utter things that are going to cause a bad outcome, like people crushing towards a fire exit in a theater and dying, right? Anybody who's running these things knows exactly what they're doing. The intention is very clear. If these are bots running these things, they need to be exposed and the firms behind them need to be exposed. And if there are any U.S. government people at all, hello, I'm talking to you, FBI, NSA, TSA, whatever other three-letter agencies we have going on. If you are involved in running these bot farms because you think that somehow you're going to like snatch defeat, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, right? Like, oh, if I just run my bot farms, maybe we create the conditions and we'll get some stochastic terrorism, take the roving eye of Elon off of us long enough that we can sort of skate through this. If you're doing that, I would support a full public trial and public consequences. I think we got to get back to that. We're going to need consequences again. 100%. And so, yeah. So let's see. Sullivan Serve says, what does it seem like you're babying these criminals that have absolutely decimated the country over the last 50 years? It's crystal clear what they have done and what they are fighting for. Yeah, they're fighting to continue their criminal operation. They are fighting for the right to continue to gaslight us, lie, cheat, steal, ruin our future, enrich themselves. That's the game. Listen, this is the arc of history. Okay. Empires rise, empires fall. They always fall almost for the exact same reasons every single time. You get those 7 deadly sins sort of become enshrined as sort of like a moral code among the raccoons at the center of the whole thing, right? Pride, greed, gluttony, sloth, envy, those sorts of things, lust, right? If the people in power are anything, they are prideful, they're full of hubris, and their prime motivating, animating energy of emotion would be envy, I would guess. I think it's kind of how it feels to me. All right. So carrying on, yeah, Reddit's violent streak is exposed, right? You can just keep reading over and over and over again. They have this idea that somehow, look at this, lost replacement down there under the Luigi. You know, that's Super Mario Brothers. They're lionizing Luigi as sort of like their totem. Here's somebody who stepped up and did the right thing. Luigi, of course, being the young man who shot the United Healthcare CEO in the streets of New York a while back there. But anyway, so that's just in case you were wondering, when you see a Super Mario Brothers Luigi icon, that's who they're referring to. So Nazis have taken over. It's Luigi time, and then saying Musk's platform is, they say here, 96% violent porn and hate speech. WTF? Lost replacement there, of course, making up statistics on the spot and feeling good about that. Like, yeah, 96% violent porn and hate speech. By the way, just so you know, this lost replacement 9389. If you want to know anything about what's going on in the world, you got to get off of Reddit and you got to go over to X at this point in time, because everything else is just, you're being badly misinformed. Now, this is how badly misinformed. Let me take myself off of here so we can read all of these. This is a new subreddit, r/50501. Again, I got this from Reddit_lies over on Twitter or X now. They're coming up with an entire, they're going to, big protest day. They want a big protest day. And so you can see stuff on here as you read through there. You know, the ruling elite are on your side. We will hang them, says cast them to the fires. Let me get my laser pointer thing out. Up here in the upper right, we have same, I'm a mother and privileged to live in a 2-parent household. I'm going, one of us can die. So she's ready to throw her life into this, is ready to give it up because something really bad, so bad has happened. She's ready to die for the cause, whatever that is. Bet she'd be stumped if you asked her what the cause was. Guillotines are more effective, says Comprehensive Cat 7515. Cryptographer Low 6772 says absolutely terrifying. I'd rather die trying to kill every last tech bro than live this way. Wonder what happened that's so bad. Like, live this way. What has just happened that is so bad? Oh my God, I can't live with this. Somebody is going to look into USAID's grant funding. I can't live this way. I'd rather die. Like, whoa, that escalated quickly. What just happened? Crazy. How about this one? Yes. Feel the Luigi flow through you. Okay. I'm dressing up like Luigi when I go. Super Sasquatch saying, I personally am prepared to fight and be a martyr if it comes to that. I love Canada and will fight to defend it to the end. My grandfather fought on Juno Beach as a native soldier. He was one of the first waves of troops. I owe it to him and every other veteran who sacrificed for us. I will do everything I can to protect our country. You're Canadian. I hate to tell you this, Canadian people, anybody watching, but like 60% of your households are insolvent. It had nothing to do with Elon or some tech bros or Trump. That was called a self-goal, right? You kicked that soccer ball into your own net, okay? That's because you elected and continue to elect Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and all those band of raccoons, and they absolutely destroyed your country, and that's an own goal. That's on you. Sorry. So get angry if you want, but you'd probably want to get angry at the right people and assign cause and blame in the appropriate direction. All I'm saying is, Canada, you got some introspection to be carrying on before you get angry at Elon looking at USAID grants. I'm not following you here, Canadian guy. It's more reckless to let these traitors continue on this coup. Collateral damage is necessary. So look at all this. Just look at all this, right? They like guillotines. They like Luigi. They like the idea of coups. They're ready to die. What if this is not organic? What if this is manufactured hate? What if this is programming that's gotten so robust and so powerful that to the extent these are real people, they've been pulled in by basically really, really sexy marketing, right? This is just like, I have to buy a Prius. It's like, you can't explain why. Well, the marketing got to you. I think that's what's happening here. And so imagine this. If you are somebody who feels that you've been drawn into this orbit of hate, or somebody who's been drawn into this orbit of hate, think how just deeply embarrassing it's going to be to discover that all of this emotional, like to the point where you're like, I can't live this way, I'm ready to die. Like, that's pretty serious. But to the extent you've allowed somebody with a different set of interests, which by the way, don't include you, they're not interested in you, they don't care at all how your life turns out, that they just nudged you and poked you and gave you some some Facebook memes and just served up an echo chamber, tiled for you, just so that, and you end up like having a ruined life as a consequence of that. Well, it's kind of on you, but how embarrassing that is. How embarrassing to be just nudged by some people who frankly are just gross sociopaths who don't care at all about you. And next thing you know, they've got you whipped into this state. Frankly, it's just embarrassing. It really is. Just full stop. How about this, where we see this little exchange between Lear Me That Bifrost and Tickle Me Cliffy. And so just look at this. It just goes, I'll let you read that. Are you threatening my freedom of speech? You should be careful doing that. Won't end well for little bitches like you. Death threats. Someone needs to beat the shit out of you, sweetheart. On and on and on. I'll guarantee you that Tickle Me Cliffy in real life considers themselves to be a good person who believes in feminist principles and all that. But when they got triggered, which was easy, next thing you know, because this person said, you should probably be more worried about the FBI than the Reddit admins, judging by your comments. Just saw that Musk included you in his report to the feds. Good luck. I hate you now. You little bitch. Right? You can beat the shit out of you, sweetheart. It's just, oh my God. This is crazy. This is like full on sickness going on over here. It's like, by the time your worldview gets distorted to the point that this becomes how you think, you might be in a cult. Again, a cult is an organized system of thinking that works against your better interest. By the time you're saying, you know what, I'm so destroyed by this stuff that doesn't even impact my daily life yet, that it's just something happening somewhere else. I'm so destroyed by that, I'm going to throw myself on the metaphorical, if not literal, pyre of life. Whoa, Bucky. Maybe you're following the wrong guru. Might want to check your sources there. That's how I'm looking at this. At any rate, again, at Reddit_lies on X for all the fun. You can see this stuff. But look at this. Reddit continues to crash out. Awaken the Aegis. If you're not calling for the execution of Musk and his cronies, then you are part of the problem, says Awaken the Aegis. Hello? FBI here. Saving, saying, man, dude, you need therapy, man. You are a bot. Well, Awaken the Aegis, I hate to tell you this. Either you're the bot or you fell victim to bots. But here's the prime conclusion of all this, okay? And then we'll wrap up here. I just wanted to talk about this idea of stochastic terrorism, the idea that stochastic terrorism, and I'll tell you what, let me just let me go back to that full stop and let me get back to this because I just want to review this together very quickly because this is really important. That's what we were talking about today, that all of that hate and the bots that you see out there are, listen, it might be real people, and it probably includes a few real people, but definitely it includes some not real people. And those not real people are contributing to this overall idea that political violence is okay. There's this hostile public rhetoric. It's being fully directed now at Elon and his little boys. I can't stand this, right? And it's an incitement to violence. This is stochastic terrorism. And if it's being wielded by people inside the United States, either directly or indirectly, if we dig through the USAID funding and discover that they are funding this behavior at all, I would support the most draconian of penalties you could possibly imagine. I'm talking life in prison and completely shred everything your family owns just gets taken away, like all the money, all gone, right? There has to be consequences for this because this is not okay. Because if this continues and they're allowed to continue trying to foment this, first they ruin lives, right? Lots of individual lives get ruined, right? Because people end up just angry and confused. They belong to a team that's constantly telling them they ought to be like alarmed and on fire and unhappy. Some of them are going to go out and commit acts of violence that are going to be life-changing events for them where they can't recover from those. They may commit things that become a blight on their soul. So they'll have karmic issues they're going to have to deal with. There's all kinds of bad stuff. So to the extent that people are willingly, openly, knowingly contributing to this and pushing bots out there to create the environment of stochastic terrorism, I think those people should be held responsible to the fullest account. And if you are listening to this and you are part of this and you're running this for a corporation, for an NGO, or for an agency, or for a foreign government, I think you should think long and careful about it, because when we find out about this, and we will, and I think that's what people voted for, that's certainly what I voted for here, is we need change. We're all done being fat, stupid, and broke, lied to, gaslit, and having this enforcement. Like, we try and just go on and have a nice time on social media, and there's some bots in there that want us to all, be fractured, divided, unhappy, fat, stupid, and broke, right? I'm like, I'm totally not down with that. So I don't want any more psychological programming, no nudge units. I would make it completely illegal. It should be totally illegal for people, entities, individuals to use tools of persuasion that are this sophisticated that they break people's brains. That's what I wanted to talk about here today. So at any rate, let me see. Let's see what else we got here as we wrap up. Let's see. Okay. Like this book recommendation, Big Intel, How the CIA and FBI Went from Cold War Heroes to Deep State Villains by J. Michael Waller. Okay. That sounds interesting. Certainly on point here today. And let's see, what else we got here? Yeah, I think this is true. Wrong way. They figured out how to tap into the emotionality and strip rationality. Quite terrifying. And it's very powerful. People skipped right over all the intervening steps, went from, I don't know anything about USAID to like, kill them. It's just, whoa, that was a little abrupt, but we've seen that over and over again, right? We saw it with the masks. Remember, I'm old enough to remember COVID, where I had to read about headlines where they were saying things like, 68% of Democrats think that, people who don't vaccinate their children should have them taken from them and be put in camps, right? Like, how'd we get there so quickly? This makes sense. I have to be vaccinated so your vaccination works. It's just, the logic centers, the emotional centers are completely short-circuited in this whole thing. So it's just no good. And let's see if there's anything else in here before I wrap up. And by the way, if you like this kind of content, you're going to come to peakprosperity.com, because I'm going to be on this full stop. You know what I did during COVID was daily coverage. I'm going to be doing pretty much daily coverage now on the things that are happening. It's happening so fast. This is kind of feels 1776-ish in a lot of ways. It's like, listen, there was this, we finally had enough and said, no, we just can't continue this way. We're fat, stupid, and broke. We're tired of that, and we want to just do it different. But there's a whole group of people like, no, we insist. We want to be fat, stupid, broken, violently angry, right? And we're like, oh, whoa, okay. So this might be a little bit more of a fight than I thought. Because you would think people eventually would go, yeah, you know what? Totally, let's stop poisoning our own children. That's a good idea. I thought there would be some overlap on that subject. Turns out there isn't. Turns out there's a whole group of people like, no, I'm totally not okay with that. I think we should continue poisoning and harming our children. And we just found out who they are. That's cool. But not all of them. And it turns out a surprising number of people want to live under the boot of oppression, and they're insisting on it, and I get it. Yeah, definitely a cult. You're right, Tim Williams. So that's what we're fighting. It's a cult. I think it's a death cult, because honestly, everything they do is not affirming of life. That's been a thesis I've had for a long time. It just fits with the data that we currently have. If the data changes, I'll change my mind. But that's the prime problem that we're up against, is that there are people who just, they don't care what happens to other people. I do, and I know you do. And there's even more of us than them who actually do care about how things turn out, right? I want to create a better future for your kids. I've never met them, probably never will. I just want to create a better future because that's the right thing to do as a mature, non-insane, non-broken human being. It's just quite normal. So we're going to get back to that. I think that's what this fight is really about. But man, this is getting interesting. It's getting spicy. And so a lot of what I'm discussing back at Peak Prosperity concerns what are they going to do? Because, the they in this story, like the high-end USAID officials like Samantha Powers and people like her, they have a decision to make. It's like, well, I could just sort of go, okay, yeah, you guys have a point, and let me just go quietly into the good night. Or they do what they've always done, which is something awful because they can't face the music and they refuse to. And they would rather do something awful to you than have to spend even a solitary second wondering if they're the baddies. So you have to worry about that, of course. There's things we can do to prepare. So is it going to be a military thing that they're going to initiate? Is it a financial thing, a market thing, another pandemic? Who knows? All right. With that, thanks very much for listening today, everybody. And we'll be back. But this was just a surprise signal hour. Hope you got something out of it. Hope it was good for you. I had a lot of fun. As fun as you can have on a subject like this, stochastic terrorism. You'll see it everywhere now that you know to look for it. Bye for now.